Good morning and welcome to a Choice live stream. I'm Jonathan Brown and thank you for joining us. Choice is Australia's non-profit consumer advocate, and like many organisations around the world, we're adapting to the COVID-19 situation. Right now, our journalists, experts and campaigners are working on a range of consumer rights issues that are coming up as a result of COVID-19. And I'd really like to make a particular mention of Choice members, supporters and community. You're giving us so many vital tip-offs and information that's helping us to report and act on the consumer issues that are coming up as part of the COVID-19 crisis. This is a test stream from us, and if it's helpful and you'd like more on other topics, please do let us know. For this live stream, you can join us on Twitter at Choice Australia with your questions, but also the Choice community, as I mentioned, giving us lots of great tip-offs and information along the way. Choice.community, if you put that into your browser, you will be able to share with our community. Now, today we're talking about travel. Obviously, the travel industry has been one of the most heavily impacted by COVID-19. And between domestic and international travel, Australians spend a lot of money each year with airlines, accommodation, and tourist operators. But of course, travel bans mean most of this travel has been cancelled. And with a lot of Australians losing jobs, struggling financially right now, many of you will be looking for refunds and needing to assert your consumer rights. Please note we are here to help, but this live stream isn't legal advice. So you'll need advice for your own personal situations. Everything we present here is general in nature. To answer your questions today, we have Choice Travel Expert Jodi Bird. We'll only be able to get through a few questions, but please do tag us on Twitter at Choice Australia or in the comments. So let's chat. Jodi joins me now. Thanks for joining us for this live stream, Jodi.
Thank you.
Give us a sense. What are the most pressing things that you're being asked about at the moment?
The most pressing thing at the moment is people asking for refunds on their trip. Basically, obviously the travel advice levels were raised to do not travel on the 18th of March, and then on Monday night that was escalated to a travel ban, which means that at the moment anyone in Australia can't go ahead with their overseas trip for the foreseeable future. So everyone in Australia who had a trip booked for most of this year is now trying to cancel it. Obviously, a lot of people are out of work or worried about their financial situation, so they would like to get money back. So that's the most common question we're getting right now.
Many people are trying to use their travel insurance right now for people who've already been impacted by this. Is there anything in particular they should be looking for when they're trying to claim?
Yes, so there's two things to look at in your travel insurance. Firstly is when you actually purchase the travel insurance. So the coronavirus was identified by the travel insurers that cover things such as pandemic or epidemic. They identified it as a known event around about the 21st to the 31st of January. So after the 31st of January, if you bought a policy after then, it becomes more difficult to find a policy that will still cover coronavirus. Having said that, if you did buy a policy after then, still please speak to your travel insurer, because some of the travel insurers are still helping people out. But if you bought a policy before the 31st of January, then what you need to have a look at is whether your travel insurance covers pandemic or epidemic. So the way you can do that is you get your product disclosure statement, which is the terms and conditions that were sent out by your insurer when you bought the policy. And if you do a find in that, it'll be a PDF file usually. Do a find, look for the words pandemic or epidemic, and then have a look at the context around that section. So usually when they actually mention it, it means they're mentioning it as an exclusion. So they might exclude it for all claims, or they might exclude it just for medical, or they might exclude it just for cancellation. So you can have a look at that. If you don't find those words in your product disclosure statement, it's a bit hard to get my mouth around that one, If you don't find those words in there, there's a good chance your policy does cover it. But again, please double check with your travel insurer.
So, what about all of the other services that people have been accessing? So, travel agents and flights, accommodation. What is the kind of process you should go through when you're trying to figure out this mess? Who do you contact the travel insurer first? Do you contact these businesses first? What's your recommendations for people trying to unpick all of that?
The first step is to have a look and decide whether you want to cancel everything and try and claim a refund, or if you'd prefer to reschedule or perhaps claim a credit voucher. Generally speaking, if you're happy with credit vouchers or rescheduling, you're probably going to get an easier course. You're going to get more yes answers. Most of the industry are happier to rebook at the moment or give a credit voucher out. But if you need money, if you want to try and get a refund, then you will sometimes face a bit more of an uphill battle. But just be aware that you will face that battle, but persistence might help out quite a lot there. So you need to be ready for a bit of a fight. And yes, if your travel insurance, if you have travel insurance, you can check in at that early stage with your travel insurer as to whether they're likely to cover you. That can help you decide whether you want to cancel and try and claim a refund, or whether you want to reschedule. So if your travel insurer says, no, we're not going to give you any money, then maybe you're better off rescheduling. If they indicate that they might give you some kind of coverage, then you can go ahead and make those cancellations and then go and lodge a claim with your travel insurer.
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to accessing those refunds, I mean, you've clarified that it could be quite hard right now. You've been in this space for quite a few years, and obviously, call centers are quite busy. It can be hard to contact a lot of these business, making sure they actually listen.
Yeah, the first thing to keep in mind at this stage is if you don't have a trip booked in, say, the next week or even the next few days, put it off, call them later. Basically, a lot of companies, from airlines all the way through to travel agents, the level of people asking them what to do is unprecedented. So the latest statistics that we have from a few years ago, but in the year to March 2017, there were 9 million visitors going overseas. At the moment, every single person in Australia who has a trip booked is, for probably most of this year, is trying to cancel that trip. There is millions and millions of people trying to do the same thing as you right now. So if you have a trip booked later, if it's in May or June, then maybe wait a few weeks, and hopefully there'll be less congestion, and you'll be speaking to people who maybe are a bit less stressed and just trying to get you off the phone. So if you can do that, if you can put it off, because you're more likely to get listened to.
And what about intermediaries? Because we're seeing a lot of issues, and a lot of the tip-offs that we're receiving from people involve either a travel agent or a booking site that they've worked through. What do you do in the case where there's an intermediary in the middle? And in some cases, we're hearing examples that people might not be getting refunds when the original booking, the airline or the accommodation has put through a refund. We are hearing some tips that those intermediaries might not be passing on those refunds. How do you deal with intermediaries in the middle?
Yeah, so the first thing to bear in mind is, generally speaking, whoever you paid the money to for your trip, that's who you need to claim the money back from. Sometimes you will get some intermediaries, which are usually travel agents. They don't always call themselves a travel agent, but an online site such as booking.com or Expedia is generally known as an online travel agent. If you paid through them, you need to kind of pursue them to get your money back. And we have seen, well, in one particular case, it seems at the moment STA Travel are getting a refund from the airlines, but then holding the money as a credit with STA Travel. As far as we can ascertain at the moment, that looks like something that they can do. We've asked for clarification on that. But yeah, it's again, if you would prefer a refund, there's some resources on the Australian Competition and Consumer site that you can point them to. We can perhaps post some links to that in our Choice community or on Twitter. And you can send that to your travel agent and say, look, this outlines our rights to a refund. In this case, we intend to escalate the matter if you don't want to give us a refund.
Let's stay on the theme of travel agents. There's been a couple of specific questions that have been coming up a fair bit. Can a travel agent keep your deposit, and can they charge a cancellation fee in these circumstances?
Yeah, so I'll pick up on the deposit one first. We have seen a few instances of travel agents actually, well, A, keeping the deposit, but B, people have upcoming payments for the rest of the trip, and they obviously don't want to pay that for the rest of the trip because they might not be able to go on it. And then the travel agents are saying, well, we're going to keep your deposit then. Again, in those ACCC guidelines, there's a guideline around what is considered a fair deposit. A fair deposit is generally considered to be 10%, unless the agent or the accommodation or the service can prove that they are entitled to a greater amount. But if it's more than 10%, in some cases we've seen people have paid a deposit of 25%. In that case, under the Australian consumer law, that's likely to be considered a prepayment, and prepayments for cancellations are actually refundable. So again, if you have a travel agent or an intermediary saying they're going to keep your deposit under that circumstance, it's okay for them to keep a reasonable deposit, which should be about 10%. If it's more than that, send them the ACCC guidelines and say, look, we think we're entitled for a refund. If you can't give that to us, we'll escalate it to our local state consumer affairs body. Regards to cancellation fees, yes, they can take a cancellation fee that reflects the reasonable or actual costs of making the booking to start with and processing the cancellation. There's been a bit of angst around that. What is a reasonable fee is a bit subjective. It is worth bearing in mind, a lot of people who have been going through and doing the cancellations themselves probably have an idea of there's actually quite a lot of legwork in phoning up or emailing, different providers, filling out forms, actually arranging for the payments to come through. And then when you're speaking to a travel agent, they're doing all that work for you. And they, at the same time, they've got employees doing the work, so they've got to pay for the hours of that employee. They've got lights on in the buildings to kind of make it so people can still do all this. So they have a printer to sign forms, so that there is a case there for a travel agent to charge a reasonable fee. What we've seen in some cases, for example, Flight Centre charges a standard fee of $300 cancellation fee, which sounds reasonable, but then they're charging it per booking per person in addition to supplier fees. So it can escalate quite quickly. So if you've booked a flight and a cruise and some accommodation through Flight Centre for a couple, you can end up paying $300 each for the flight you booked through Flight Centre, the $300 each for the accommodation, and then $300 each for the cruise as well. So then you're actually up for I think about $1,800 in cancellation fees. And then that starts to sound quite an unreasonable amount. And in addition to that, then they can actually pass through charges from the supplier.
So let's take a look back at travel insurance, because with these pandemic clauses that are in a lot of travel insurance policies now, a lot of these policies are effectively useless, and the cancellations have made a lot of these policies useless. What can you do in terms of, can you get a refund on your travel insurance itself?
That's a good question. There's a lot of people who have been asking that. As far as we can ascertain, there's no legal obligation for the insurer to give you a refund or to, say, reschedule your insurance to a different time. That being said, there are insurers, we've seen that they're having that discussion about doing that, and we've seen in a lot of cases insurers are giving people a credit voucher towards a future premium or allowing people to reschedule the insurance policy to a later time. So that's definitely worth speaking to the insurer and just asking about.
And just more broadly, in terms of your consumer rights at this time, there's obviously, I mean, asserting your consumer rights at any time, there's certain processes that are smarter to take and ways to assert your consumer rights. Obviously, there's a lot of stress right now. I'm wondering if you could do a summary for us of step by step if someone wants a refund or wants to sort out something, whether it be an airline, whether it be a travel agent, accommodation. What are the best ways to complain in the first instance or speak to them about a refund or an issue, and then where can you escalate from there if you're not getting the help or the support that you need?
Yes, so the first thing to do actually is to have a look at the terms and conditions of the kind of contract you have with a travel agent, or if it's an airline, you have a look at the conditions of carriage. A lot of the airlines at the moment are putting out information on cancellations related to the coronavirus. But in addition to that, they have standard conditions of carriage, which you can also refer to, and there will be a section in there under refunds and cancellations. So, for example, at the moment, Qantas are offering people to rebook their flight to a later time in the year with no cancellation charges, which is great. If you can do that, then I'd recommend doing that. If you do want to refund, sometimes, again, like I said before, it's better to wait. If your flight hasn't been a chance of getting a refund. Same with travel agents. Have a read of the terms and conditions of the offer and make sure that you understand those when you speak to the travel agent. And just refer back to that. If you think that they're not going specifically by their own terms and conditions, you can point that out. Otherwise, if the terms and conditions kind of enable them to pass a fee or a refund which you think is impinging on your consumer rights under the Australian consumer law, then you can send them the information on the Australian consumer law, which again we'll post in our socials, and send it to them, refer them to that information and say, look, I think this part of your terms and conditions is superseded by Australian consumer law, and can you please reconsider, the fee or giving a refund? And if that doesn't get you anywhere, the next stage after that is to complain to your local state consumer affairs body, and it's best to mention that when you contact the agent or the airline that's going to be your intention if they can't find a remedy. But yeah, if you don't get a remedy through that, then you escalate the complaint to the consumer affairs body in your state.
And we do have a lot of advice up at choice.com.au to help you in using the right language when asserting your consumer rights. So please do check that out at choice.com.au. Jodi, we have been receiving a lot of public feedback about travel and travel issues. You've also been out in the media talking quite a bit. What are the most common themes you're hearing? What are the most pressing concerns that are coming from these media interviews that you're doing and the contact people are having from Choice?
Yes, so probably there's a few things. One is that a few of them already touched on. One is just people having difficulty getting through to airlines and travel agents and basically anyone to do in the travel industry, travel insurance. Even ourselves, a lot of people are sending us queries and it's taking us probably about a week to get back to them. And that just comes down to this unprecedented level of people just cancelling or rearranging their trips. So yeah, if you can delay contacting providers or agents, then do that. The other main queries we have probably with regards to people wanting to get a refund instead of a credit voucher or rebooking their trip. And yeah, like I said, generally speaking, if you want to cancel and get a refund, you're going to get more no's in the first instance. The main thing you can do there is keep asking and keep escalating and refer them to your rights and the Australian consumer law. Like JB said, visit the Choice website. We've got advice up on specifically what your advice is, and we refer you to some resources that you can send along to your travel agent or provider and tell them that you intend to escalate it. And then probably the other main one is around deposits. I'm saying, well, there's obviously a reasonable level of deposit, but just the practice of keeping deposits. Again, it does seem that the agents are entitled to keep a deposit as long as that deposit is deemed a reasonable deposit, which should be around about 10% deposit.
All right, well, we have been taking your questions on Twitter at Choice Australia, and we've got a little bit of time to look into a couple of them. The details are there at Choice Australia. Do tag us on Twitter. And after this live stream, please join us in the Choice community at choice.community. If you have any tip-offs, information, or any questions, our great Choice community members will be there to help and assist you. But let's go to some of your questions. We have at Red Fiddler on Twitter says, I have Qantas flights for the 9th and 10th of June for my graduation. The graduation's being cancelled, and the only option at this point on the Qantas website is to get a voucher rather than a refund. I will never use these flights. How do I get a refund? They're saying that Qantas isn't answering the phone because they're swamped. We also have at Ray Glimmer, my Air Mauritius flight has been cancelled. The travel agent has been unreachable. Their phone seems disconnected. No reply to emails. No reply to email from the airline either. Travel date is 2 weeks from now. At this stage, I just remain an aggrieved customer. Jodi, it does really seem as though the contact with these companies is a particular issue at the moment. Is there anything people can do? Often we'll advise people that if a company has done something wrong and they've booked through a credit card, they may be able to access a credit chargeback through their credit card. Is something like that an option in situations like these?
Yes, it is. So with the booking through the travel agent, you've got that coming up in 2 weeks. Yeah, generally speaking, maybe wait another week, but actually also check if you're paid by credit or Visa or Master debit card, have a look at your card conditions, because you may be entitled to a credit card chargeback. There's usually a time frame within from when you paid for the trip and when you can claim that chargeback. So ideally, you can perhaps leave it for another week before you contact the travel agent. But if your card conditions say you need to process that chargeback now, then go through and process that chargeback now. But also advise the travel agent that's what you intend to do, because if you tell them that you're going to do that, they don't like it. So they might be more likely to prioritise a response to you. But yeah, if you've got a bit longer, if you've got longer on your credit card conditions, if it's beyond, say, a few weeks, then I'd suggest just waiting a bit longer and try the travel agent again next week. Give them a bit of time to respond, because they will be really pressed for trying to answer people's queries right now. With the flight, I think that was with Qantas, booked in June. I would probably wait until late May before you contact them. Qantas are just totally flummoxed right now. They have so many people trying to call them and rearrange things. I did see that Qantas today have extended people for flights booked up to the 30th of June. People can rebook or take a credit voucher for that flight. If that's not an option for you, then yeah, wait until late May. wait and see if the flight actually gets cancelled. Then you might be able to call Qantas and refer to their conditions of carriage and say that your conditions of carriage say that since you've cancelled this flight, I'm entitled to a refund. But yeah, otherwise, if you can take the credit voucher, or if you can rebook, then I think you need to do that by 30th of April according to their current conditions.
We have had another question come in at Edfor7. We were offered a full refund from our travel agent for flights, and they received funds back from the airline. Can they then deny providing us back our money? Their credit policy only came into effect on the 16th of March, and our refund had already been processed on the 13th of March. So we did raise this before, hearing that some travel agents might not be passing on refunds that they're receiving from other suppliers. What do we think should happen in this scenario? What are we hoping to see? Because it is concerning that we're starting to get that feedback. And I'm also keen to hear, Jodi, how can people get in touch with Choice and let us know these kind of tips as well? Because this information is really helping us to research these issues and hopefully advocate for change as well. What are the concerns with this particular issue for you?
I don't like it. It's really annoying that the suppliers are providing a refund, and then the travel agents are keeping that refund as a credit. We're clarifying. We're yet to kind of ascertain as to whether they can legally do that or not. You can, of course, refer them to your rights, like I said earlier, and refer them to the information that the ACCC provides, which we'll have on the Choice side as well, and ask for a refund instead of a credit voucher. And in the meantime, we'll keep having a look at that and just trying to ascertain exactly what is the legal situation around that. When you like JB said, when you have kind of tips or questions, probably the best place is our Choice community. We do, of course, have our Facebook as well if you just want to put in a tip. But if you can join our Choice community, that's free to join. And you can post a question in there, and we have a lot of people in there who are very keen to help out and share experiences and answer questions.
And just finally, Jodi, can you give us a sense? We're working on a lot of areas in relation to COVID-19, taking on your feedback in the community and trying to help out in as many different areas as we can. What are you working on at the moment? What's coming up? What have you written about it on at choice.com.au, and what's coming?
So the advice we have up there at the moment is in relation to travel insurance and pandemics, or travel insurance and coronavirus, and when and where you can use your travel insurance. We also have advice in that article on the kind of 6 steps to take to try and claim a cancellation. And then coming up next week, we're putting up some advice on how to get your money back from your travel agent, or indeed if you can get your money back from your travel agent. That will answer a lot of those common questions around refunds, deposits, cancellation fees. And we will also be having a closer look at the airlines and their policies, and we'll put up some information on that, looking at what their current policies are. Their current policy around coronavirus often complements their existing policy around compensation. So when do you refer to the current advice, and when can you refer to their existing compensation policy? So we'll put something up on that next week as well.
Jodi, thank you for joining us. You've been so helpful, and people can read your work at choice.com.au. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
If you would like to get in touch with us, please do. You can get in touch on Twitter at Choice Australia or our Choice community forums. Thank you so much for joining us for this live stream. This is a test from Choice. We are Australia's non-profit consumer advocate, and we are looking for whatever different ways we can help you in the community in this really tough time. So we would love your feedback And please do get in touch. Your feedback, your tip-offs, the information that you are feeding to us as a consumer advocate is helping us to act. So we thank you so much to Choice members, our supporters, our campaigners, and the Choice community. Thank you for joining us for this live stream. If you want to hear any other topics, please do get in touch in the comments, or you can get in touch on Twitter at Choice Australia. I'm Jonathan Brown. Thank you to Jodi Bird for joining us for this live stream. Also to producer Jim Hook for helping behind the scenes. Until next time, thank you very much for joining us. And just a reminder, the advice we've given here is general in nature. You will need to get specific advice for your personal circumstances. We hope we've been helpful, and thank you. You could read more at choice.com.au.